I always believed my parents loved me. Growing up, I never questioned it. They had a nice house, stable jobs, and they always told everyone how proud they were of me. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. But things started changing after my grandmother passed away. My grandmother and I were very close. I spent most weekends at her place when I was younger. She used to say I was the only one in the family who actually listened to her stories. When she died, it hit me harder than I expected. A few weeks after the funeral, a lawyer contacted me. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. I had never dealt with lawyers before, but he insisted we meet in person. When I arrived at his office, he explained something that completely shocked me. My grandmother had left something for me. Not just a small gift or keepsake. She had set up a financial trust in my name years earlier. According to the lawyer, she wanted to make sure I would always have a safety net no matter what happened in the future. The amount wasn't life-changing billionaire money, but it was still significant. $90,000. The trust had strict rules. I couldn't access the full amount immediately, but it was protected and managed by the law firm until certain conditions were met. The lawyer looked at me very seriously before I left. "Be careful who you tell about this," he said. At the time, I thought that sounded overly dramatic. After all, why would my own family be a problem? So when I got home that evening, I told my parents everything. And that was the moment I unknowingly started the biggest mistake of my life. At first, they acted supportive. My mom hugged me and said my grandmother must have trusted me a lot. My dad smiled and joked that maybe I should finally start thinking about real investments. But over the next few weeks, something about their behavior began to feel different. Small comments started appearing. My dad would casually mention how expensive the house repairs were getting. My mom would talk about how stressful their mortgage payments had become. Then one night during dinner, my dad leaned back in his chair and said something that made the entire room feel colder. "You know," he said slowly, "families are supposed to help each other when things get tough." I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back now, that was the moment the plan started forming in their minds, and I had absolutely no idea what was coming next, because 3 months later, my own parents would stand at the front door and tell me I had to leave. What they didn't realize was that my grandmother had prepared me for something exactly like this, and the real surprise was still waiting for them. Part 2. The plan I wasn't supposed to notice. The night my parents told me to leave is burned into my memory. It started like any normal evening. I had just come home from work and was halfway through reheating leftovers when my dad called me into the living room. My mom was already sitting there with her arms folded, staring at the coffee table like she had been rehearsing something. That was my first warning sign. My dad cleared his throat and said, "We need to talk about your future." Whenever parents start a sentence like that, you know something strange is coming. At first, he talked about responsibility, about adulthood, how I was old enough to stand on my own feet now. None of it made sense. I'd been paying rent to them for 2 years already. I helped with groceries. I even handled most of the small repairs around the house. Then he finally said it. "We think it's time for you to move out." Just like that. No discussion, no timeline, just a decision that had apparently already been made. I remember sitting there trying to process what I was hearing. Move out? Why now? My mom finally spoke up. Her tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "We think it'll be good for you. It'll help you become independent." Independent. That word would have sounded convincing if they hadn't looked so nervous while saying it. But then my dad added something that made the situation feel even stranger. "You know," he said slowly, "you've got that money from Grandma anyway. You'll be fine." That was the moment everything clicked in my head. This wasn't about independence. This was about the trust. Suddenly, the last few months started making sense. The questions, the casual financial discussions, the hints about financial problems, they had clearly convinced themselves that I had immediate access to the entire amount. But the truth was very different. The trust was locked under strict legal rules. I couldn't just withdraw it and hand it to someone, even if I wanted to. And more importantly, neither could they. Still, I didn't argue that night. Something in my gut told me to stay quiet and watch what happened next. So I nodded. "All right," I said. "I'll start looking for a place." The relief on their faces was immediate. It was almost too obvious. Over the next few days, their behavior became even more suspicious. My dad suddenly became very interested in the paperwork for the house. My mom kept asking questions about when the trust money would become available. Then one night during dinner, my dad leaned back in his chair and said something that made the entire room feel colder. "You know," he said slowly, "families are supposed to help each other when things get tough." I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back now, that was the moment the plan started forming in their minds, and I had absolutely no idea what was coming next, because 3 months later, my own parents would stand at the front door and tell me I had to leave. What they didn't realize was that my grandmother had prepared me for something exactly like this, and the real surprise was still waiting for them.